श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ भगवान की, श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की, समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की, जय निताई गुरु प्रेमानंदे। Hare Krishna. Mic testing. Hare Krishna. You don't have to respond. Hare Krishna. Let's recite the verses. Let's offer our respects to Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. Please repeat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srila Prabhupada ki. Let's start. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava pruchami tvam dharma samuda chetaha yachreyasya nischitam bruhitan me sishyaste hamshadi mam tvam prapannam dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptir Dhirastatra namuhyati neha vikramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apiyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat dhyayato vishayan pumsa sanghastheshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama Kamat krodho bijayate Krodhat bhavati sammoha Sammohat smriti vibramaha Smriti brimshat buddhinasho Buddhinashat pranashyati Yagyartat karmano nyatra Loko yam karma bandhanaha Tadartam karma kaunteya Mukta Sangha Samachara Yad Yad Acharati Shreshtas Tat Tad Hevetaro Janaha Sayat Pramanam Kurute Lokas Tadhanu Vartate Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidye Namiha Vairinam Saevayam Mayatedya Yoga Prokta Puratanaha Bhaktosi Me Shakacheti Rahasyam Hietad Uttamam Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Sunichaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshinaha Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Shuhrdam Sarvabhutanam Nyatva Mam Shantim Richati Yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana Shradhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Translation. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki. All of us can have our own opinion, but Krishna has his own. So we have to understand what is his opinion and we have to simply follow. Srila Prabhupada says, just like when you buy an electronic gadget or any item, they usually give a product manual with it. If you want to understand how to troubleshoot the gadget, if you want to fix it, You can reinvent the wheel, starting it from the scratch, or you can just flick through the pages, go to the appropriate section, and then find out what's wrong with the product, and you can fix it straight away. Usually the one who creates the product, he's the same person who creates the manual as well. Krishna created us. He created this also, the manual. So anything wrong with us, both grossly as well as subtly, which means anything to do with the body, senses, everything, we can simply turn to the pages of Bhagavad Gita and understand how to fix it, how to fix ourselves. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, despite, I think, 34 degrees today. I was talking to some devotees in Parramatta, and they said it's going to be 6 to 8 degrees more in Great Western Sydney today. So it's a good application of 2:14, where Krishna says happiness and distress are like summer and winter seasons. So it's a good time for us to put that philosophy into practice. I received close to 18 questions last week through emails and SMSs. I tried my best to answer them. One thing I'm encouraging everyone to do is, you can raise the questions at the end of the class. We can try to cover as much as we can till 11:30. After that, you can come and approach me personally. Srila Prabhupada says, whenever we ask any question, 3 people are benefited. It's given in Srimad Bhagavatam. The one who asks the question, obviously, he'll get his knowledge. The one who glorifies, or rather one who answers the question. And the third one is one who is listening, which is the rest of the crowd. So it's good that you approach and you get your questions answered. If you really want to take full benefit of your asking questions, please do ask during the class itself. That way, it'll help us to take the discussion a little bit more deeper. I welcome all the questions. Thank you very much, because I need to also assess how much you are grasping. That will help me assess to what depth we can take the discussions to. Okay? So today, 10:15, we'll start now. We are going to cover a number of concepts today. I'll give you a quick recap of what we discussed last week. So if you remember, at the end of chapter 146, Arjuna told to Krishna that he won't fight. And what did he do? He cast aside his bow. What's the name of the bow? Gandiva. So he cast aside the bow and he says, nah, I'm not going to fight. And then in 2.1 till 9, we also saw there are a series of other reasons also Arjuna gave. One prime reason he gave is, even if I win all the 14 worlds, unrivaled kingdom everywhere, still I don't find no means to drive away this grief. And we were discussing about how material problems can be solved only through spiritual solutions. I came across this funny quote on Facebook last week. Never discuss a solution with a pessimist, because for every solution, they have a problem. So when we approach Bhagavad Gita, we were also discussing about how, when we approach Gita, it's good to have questions, but we should also ask, rather question the questions also. On what basis are we asking the questions? If we start questioning that, then we will find our knowledge, our realizations actually going considerably deeper. And then in 2.9 also we saw how Arjuna says he won't fight. But there is a difference, we said, between Arjuna saying he won't fight in 146 to 2.9. In 146, when Arjuna cast aside his bow, he was driven primarily by his emotions. And we saw how emotions, they are products of mind. So intelligence hasn't kicked in. He's just feeling very bad about him having to kill. And we also saw how with this prowess, nobody can actually stand against him in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So when he cast aside his bow in 1.46, his mood was, no matter what, I'm not going to fight. However, from the start of second chapter onwards, especially from 2.1 till 9, we saw his mood mellowing a bit, wherein he comes to some sort of a negotiation. Usually, in negotiation, you have to come to a middle ground. So he accepts that he is feeling miserly weakness, karpanya dosha, But at the same time, he's also surrendering to Krishna. We also saw why Arjuna, he surrenders to Krishna. He could have had this conversation as a friend, as a well-wisher, as a cousin. Nevertheless, he chose to talk to Krishna as a disciple. And the reason is, talk between a guru and a disciple happens on a very serious level. Whenever a guru says anything, the disciple accepts it and tries to understand how to make sense out of that. He never challenges the guru back. So that's the mode Arjuna takes in 2.7. And in 2.9 also Arjuna says, coming to our original question, he won't fight. However, what Arjuna implies there is, in 2.7 itself he has surrendered to his guru. But in 2.9 also he's saying, I won't fight. What Acharyas have actually explained is, in 2.9, when Arjuna says he won't fight, it means that at this point of time with my mindset, I won't be able to fight. However, as a spiritual master, please remove all these doubts so that I'll become clear from illusion and then I'll fight. So here Arjuna is open to fight, or rather, he's putting on hold him lifting Gandiva and starting to shoot until he gets convinced that what he's about to do is the right thing to do. Is that clear? And then from 2.10 onwards, we saw Krishna first smiles and then he starts to give a lot of information about the science of soul. So for next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to cover a lot of concepts. So please pay close attention. If you want to make notes, you can. 2.12. In Bhagavad Gita, as it is, the purport of 2.12 is the most complex. If you can understand this, you can understand any other purport in entire Gita. It's not complex in the sense it's hard to understand. It's just it has a certain layer of information. There are 4 main arguments which Prabhupada gives. We are going to go through all 4 of them. So in 2.11, first Krishna chastises. While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are sober lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So that's what Krishna says in 2.11. 2.12, Krishna says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of these kings, nor in future shall any of us cease to be. So that's what Krishna says in 2.12. 2.13, changing bodies. And in 2.14, Krishna says, happiness and distress happens through sense perception. And in 2.15, Krishna says, those who can arise themselves beyond this concept of sense perception, they become fit for liberation. As I said, entire Gita has a flow. If we carefully analyze it, we'll understand. Please go through the summary. So in 2.13, I just want to mention one point here. Krishna first establishes in 2.12, we are not the body, but we are the soul. 2.11 also Krishna says that. You are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Okay, which means he condemns the bodily conception. Now in 2.13, Krishna establishes we are not the body by telling that the soul keeps on traversing through different stages of this body, from boyhood to youth to old age, and then at death it just cuts this body aside and then it moves to the brand new body. So Krishna in 2.13, he's saying we are not the body. Now we may think if we are not the body, we may be mind or intelligence. There are many people who think like that actually. Because of lack of knowledge of the concept of soul, they think, yes, I may not be the body, but I am my feelings, I am my intelligence. Krishna is saying, no, that's also not true. So in 2.14, Krishna is saying that we are neither the mind nor the intelligence. How does Krishna prove that? He says the happiness and distress, they arise from sense perception. We were touching on this one last week. Like morning you wake up, you feel very dull. And now at 10:20, I will say, actually in the morning I was feeling dull. So dullness was a passing emotion at one point of time. I'm still the same person, but I don't feel dull anymore, which means I can't be my emotion. Emotion is a product of mind, which means I can't be my mind. So same way we can argue that I'm not my intelligence. Because many times we think something and we make a decision, informed decision. However, few days later, few months later, we look back and we think, how stupid of us, how stupid of me, why did I make that decision? We usually have that dilemma when you go to the cloth store and you pick up the best shirt or whatever clothing. You come back, how many of you have that experience? It looked very nice in the cloth store. You bring it back. First time you wear, you lose inspiration, and then you take a vow. Never in my life will I actually wear that, and you look for every opportunity to donate it to somebody. Because you still want the money you spent on it to be respected. Okay? So even with intelligence, we may come up with thoughts. As we saw last week, we have mind and we have intelligence. Emotions are products of mind, and thoughts are products of intelligence. Today we'll discuss later in second chapter, which is the current one, about intelligence. But Krishna in 2.13 he's saying we are not the body, and in 2.14 he's saying we are neither the mind nor the intelligence. Who are we? Then Krishna goes on explaining about the nature of the soul. We saw different attributes which Krishna gives, especially 2.20. The soul can never be cut, it is unborn, primeval, eternal. And then Krishna goes on to say in 2.23 that it can never be cut into pieces, it can never be burnt, it can never be moistened, so on and so forth. Okay? So this is the flow which Krishna has actually given. Now in this, as I said, 2.12, Prabhupada touches beautifully on the concept of Mayavada. Before we go to Mayavada, if you go to the midsection of your book, there is a beautiful example, chariot example, that depicts how many of you have this picture? Okay, so here in the midsection, yeah, you found it? First time I came across a copy of Bhagavad Gita in 1998. When I opened, the first picture that I saw was this guy's. And I closed it, I never picked up after for like next 5-6 years. I thought this is what the book is actually teaching us to do. Scary. Okay, so just this one. So this is a beautiful example taken from Upanishads. If we understand this picture, we'll understand the workings of our body. How the soul works, mind works, intelligence works, body, everything. So in this analogy or in this depiction, as you can see, the 5 senses, gross senses, they are depicted as 5 different horses. As you can see, there is eyes, there is nose, you can see each one of them. And the horses are controlled by means of a rope or the reins. The reins, they denote the mind. And the one who is the driver, wearing blue garment, that is intelligence. And the passenger, once I was showing this presentation in UNSW, they said, who's that ghost traveling? I don't know why they drew. That's the soul, excuse me. That's us. So, and if you look at the expression of the soul, it's a bit scary also. I mean, you can clearly read his emotion. I've got no idea where I'm going. That's what it means. For this chariot, as I said, if we understand this particular analogy, we'll understand the workings of our entire body. So the senses, if you look at the hierarchy, first you have the body. We'll discuss this later, but we can also touch on this one now. So we have the body. Greater than the body are the senses. Okay, so the body here represents the whole chariot. So chariot is the body. So greater than the chariot are the senses. That's the horses. And greater than the senses is the mind. Greater than the mind is intelligence. And greater than the intelligence is soul. Now, even though intelligence is greater than the mind, in terms of who is more powerful, intelligence is technically more powerful. An analogy is given. If you take a big elephant, huge elephant, you'll have a mahout, one thin, skinny fellow standing right next to him. He'll have a small stick. he'll control the whole elephant, the huge, gigantic elephant, using a small stick. So that skinny person is the intelligence. One who's not powerful enough to control the elephant, but intelligent enough to figure out what it actually takes to control the elephant. That's intelligence. Which means intelligence per se is not, like the default script for intelligence is not to control the mind, it has to be trained. If you look at Ramayana, Lord Ravan, he had 10 heads. One of his head, he kept it only for sense gratification. Which means one head will plan how to conquer enemies, how to conquer different kingdoms and everything. Likewise, another one, he's a very great expert in music apparently. He plays Veena and everything, Rudra Veena. One of his head is solely dedicated only for sense gratification. So when all the 9 heads actually told him, better don't go to steal Mother Sita. Better don't go to kidnap Mother Sita. It's going to cause ruination to your entire dynasty. But this 10th head convinced the other 9, saying, nah, I know what I'm doing. Just follow what I'm saying. Okay, so the intelligence can be of 2 types. It can be lusty. It can be spiritual. So for the soul to actually go to the proper destination, 2 things are required. What is the destination where the soul is supposed to go? With that, it can actually train the intelligence, and intelligence would know, the driver would know where to go. Second, the path. So 2 things that are required is, one is the path, and the other is destination that the path leads to. If you look at this picture, the reins, rope, they are powerful, but they are not independent. What can the reins do? So, intelligence controls the senses using the mind, through the mind. That's how we understand this. So if intelligence is actually trained, how do we train it? By studying scriptures, chanting Hare Krishna, associating with devotees, hearing scriptures and everything, we train the intelligence. Memory is part of intelligence. Very interesting topic. We'll discuss more in 6th chapter. But for now, let us understand the hierarchy. Any questions on this one? Yes?
Kind of confuses emotions, feelings, and ego. How it is included.
Okay. Good question. How are emotions, feelings, thoughts related to ego? So subtle body, there are 3 types of subtle body. One is the mind. Second is the intelligence. And third is the ego, false ego. The product of the mind is emotions, which means if you look at something or you think of something, the first surging emotion which you actually get, that's a product of mind. Now intelligence would actually then vet those emotions to tell you whether it's good or not. How does it do? By accessing its own faculty of thoughts along with memory. What is stored in the memory? Wisdom, knowledge, whatever it learned, its experience, everything, intelligence has access. We can't train the mind per se. We can train the intelligence, and intelligence in turn can actually control the mind. Just like here. How can you control the reins? You tell the reins, hey, if the horse goes, 100 kilometers per second, you have to pull back. You can't. However, intelligence also can't jump over the horses to control. It can't. You understand this? So, mind is more powerful than the intelligence, but mind alone cannot control the senses because senses will drag the mind. Because mind can't think. It has just emotions at its disposal. Okay? Just the feelings, emotions, they're all product of mind. Ego just keeps on misidentifying. In other words, we have the soul here. Okay, soul is Satchidananda. Whereas if you take this body is made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence. Technically, these elements. Technically, the nature or the quality of the soul and the quality of the body, they are completely 2 different things. It's like mixing water with oil. They never glue together. That's where ego kicks in. Ego is the conduit between the soul and our entire material body. That includes mind, intelligence, everything. Ego is the glue. If you take a body of water and you take a drop of oil, if the drop of oil is the soul, it can never mix. It will always be separate. However, we are so convinced, despite understanding, reading, hearing that we are the soul, we are still convinced this is my body. I was reading Mukunda Maharaj's book, 26 Miracle on 26 2nd Avenue. He goes to meet Swamiji for the first time, and he attends the class. And during the entire class, Prabhupada was giving class on Dehinosmin Yata Dehe, and Prabhupada was saying, so I am not the body. So if you chant Hare Krishna, you can go to spiritual world. So I am not the body. Then Maharaj actually writes, when the class finished, Maharaj took his notebook out and he wrote in it. 2 things I learned today. If you chant Hare Krishna, you'll go to spiritual world. Second, Swamiji is not his body. Sometimes, your mind will actually convince you so much, my understanding is right. So that's how he writes. So point is, we are also not the body. So ego makes us misidentify. So that is the function of ego, to misidentify. That's why we call it false ego, ahankar. Okay? Real ego is called swarupa. We'll discuss it later in 9th chapter, but for now, I just want to touch on this one. That's all. Okay? So, as I said, body. I think that was not part of the QR code comes up there. Okay, so we have the body, we have senses. Senses are the horses, the mind, they are the reins, intelligence, that's the driver. So the studying scriptures, chanting Hare Krishna, associating with devotees, all of this helps us to train the intelligence. And then we have the soul. Ultimately, soul is the master of all of them, but in the misidentified state of our consciousness, we think we are the body. So, a long way to go to actually realize we are the soul. First, we have to understand we are not the senses, not the mind, not the intelligence, and then we go to soul. Okay? So, going back to 212. Mayavada. In spiritual circles, Prabhupada says there are 2 schools of thoughts. One is the personalism or the personalists. Second is the impersonalism. Personalism is easy for us to understand. Vaishnavas, they follow personalism. To understand Krishna as a form, to understand we also have a form, whether in conditioned state or in liberated state, that is personalism. In other words, Bhakti Yoga is personalism. Now, impersonalism, they are of 2 types. One is Brahmavada, and the second is Mayavada. If you read 2:11 purport, Prabhupada touches on this. I'm just talking from these 2 verses only, by the way. So one exercise I'm going to give you is, go home, after we discuss, go through those 2 verses, and I want you to come back with questions. As I said, if you understand the 2:12, I don't expect you to remember, by the way. You don't need to tell me each and every point. But when you read the purport, every point should actually make sense to you. That's the only exercise. Okay, if anything doesn't make sense, you can ask me. Okay, but as I said, if you understand 2:12, this is the most technical verse in entire Gita. The purport of that, if you understand, you will understand any other verse. So in 2:11, Prabhupada tells the supreme absolute truth or the supreme Lord has 3 aspects. One is Brahman, second is Paramatma. Bear with me, this is slightly technical, but catch as much as you can. And the third is Bhagavan. On a high level, Brahman means, Prabhupada gives this example. You have the sun globe, the sunshine, that is Brahman, the energy of the Lord. Paramatma is like the surface of the globe. That is Paramatma. And Bhagavan is the personalities that live in sun globe, Prabhupada says. So same way, Bhagavan is Krishna, the Supreme Lord himself. Paramatma is his expansion. In our body, there are 2 souls. One is the soul, Jivatma, which is ourselves. Second is super soul. Like we have Superman, Prabhupada names it super soul. That's Paramatma, who resides in every body. Every embodied living entity in this world, Paramatma exists. Now, point to understand, Paramatma doesn't exist in spiritual world. Okay, so Paramatma's, not lifespan, Paramatma's jurisdiction finishes with the material world. Okay, if you think in some time in future, which is unlikely, hypothetically if you think sometime in future when all material world gets closed down, Paramatma won't exist after that at all. Paramatma doesn't exist in spiritual world at all. Okay, he simply accompanies the soul as the soul traverses from one body to the other. Okay, as the Jivatma. That's why he's called Paramatma. The soul is called Jiva Atma. Sometimes you will see the word Jiva is used, sometimes Atma is used. Both are used in synonymously to refer to the soul. That's us. And Paramatma is the expansion of Bhagavan, Krishna. Now Brahman, that's the bodily effulgence of Krishna. Okay, so there are three levels. One is Bhagavan, second is Paramatma, and third is Brahman. Now Brahmavada means those who think this is the first level. Brahman is the first level, Paramatma is the second level, ultimate level or the highest level is Bhagavan. If somebody comes to realize about Brahman alone and think there's nothing beyond that, that person is called Brahmavada, Brahmavadi. You have the picture of four Kumaras. So the four Kumaras you will actually see in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. They were born Brahmavadis. So when Brahma creates them, they were of the understanding that the Supreme Lord doesn't have any form at all. Until they came across this pastime, wherein one day they have this very strong aroma of tulasi leaves entering into their nostrils and they feel very spiritual. They feel something magical, something transforming inside them. They couldn't find the cause of that, so they smell their way back to spiritual world. That's the picture. You see, one of them, he's still smelling. And then they look at the Supreme Lord, and then they, just by looking at him, they get transformed. They immediately get convinced. Supreme Lord has a form. Okay, another example that's actually given in scriptures is that of Shukadeva Goswami, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Even though he is a Nitya Siddha, for that pastime, when he was born, he was talking about Brahmavada only. And then Vyasadeva sends his disciples to the forest to go and recite about the glories of Krishna. When Shukadeva Goswami comes to know about it, then he immediately accepts the Supreme Lord has a form. Okay? So, Brahmavadis, knowledge is correct, but incomplete. Brahmavadis are innocent. Okay? Just like a kindergarten kid, or maybe, year 2, year 3, it may study some mathematics. And the baby may think, that's all, I've become the master of the field of mathematics. That's out of innocence. So same way, a Brahmavadi realized the Brahman aspect of the Lord. However, he thinks that's the all in all. There is nothing beyond it. Brahmavadis are innocent, and Brahmavadis can, by the association of devotees, become Vaishnavas. Those who follow or accept the Supreme Lord as Bhagavan, as having personality, the Bhagavan aspect, they are called Vaishnavas. Those who accept the Supreme Lord as having only Brahman, they are Brahmavadis, generally Brahmanas. Brahmanas means those who realize Brahman. That's Brahmanas. We use the word Brahmana so liberally. I'm a Brahmana, but I've never realized Brahman. But that's Brahman. Okay. Second level is Paramatma, yogis, hatha yogis. You will see they sit yama, niyama, asana. So when they go deep in their meditation, you will see some pictures. Our friend here. And you will see some other pictures here. A person sits on meditation and he sees the Supreme Lord in the body of each and every living entity. So that's Paramatma. Okay, and then Bhagavan is, welcome to Krishna consciousness. So we accept the Supreme Lord as having a form. We accept the Supreme Lord as having qualities, attributes. We accept the Supreme Lord as a personality. So that's Bhagavan. So that's Brahmavada. Brahmavada means one who understands the Supreme Lord to not have any form at all, and he is convinced that's how much it is. There is nothing beyond. On the other hand, there are other types of impersonalists called Mayavadis. And Prabhupada wasn't such a good friend of them. Almost in every purport, Prabhupada will take a jab at them. So we are going to go through quickly 212. Prabhupada uses 4 arguments in the verse to defeat Mayavada. Now let's first understand what is Mayavada. According to Mayavad philosophy, they also say Supreme Lord has got no form. So they also come under the category of impersonalists. However, their understanding is this: in spiritual world, okay, this is based on Bhakti Yoga. And this is based on Mayavada. Bhakti Yoga says we all lived in the spiritual world. Let's say this is Goloka. We have Krishna there. And we have all the living entities, the green dots. And then we all rebelled against Krishna. Krishna created material world. Only B is missing for BMW. So that's material world. And then all the souls, they fall from there. And then sometimes Krishna also descends. Now when he descends, it doesn't mean Krishna doesn't exist there. When he descends means Krishna expands also. In his original form, Krishna can be there also. However, the relationship between the Supreme Lord and each of the souls is exactly same and is maintained even in material world. The position of the Supreme Lord is also maintained in exactly same way, as well as the relationship, which means the Supreme Lord is always at the top. We as Jivas, we are all servants and we are all connected to the Supreme Lord. This is how it existed in Goloka. In material world also, when Krishna comes down, he maintains his identity. We also maintain our identity, but each one of us, we may have a body, which we didn't have there. Okay, so each of us have that body here. That's the only difference. However, the relationship between Krishna and the green dots, they exist eternally. Is that clear? So this is Bhakti Yoga. Whether in liberated state or in conditioned state, the position of Krishna, position of Jiva, as well as their relationship always is maintained. Okay. Second thing that Prabhupada also explains is the nature of the soul and the nature of the Lord, they are qualitatively same, but quantitatively different. As much as a drop of the ocean and the entire ocean, they both have the same sourness. However, in terms of quantity, one is huge, infinite, and the other one, Prabhupada says, is infinitesimal, very, very tiny. So that's the relationship between us and Krishna. Nature is the same, or quality is same, whereas quantity different. Okay, this is Bhakti Yoga in principle. Now, how do Mayavada differ? So let's start. So there is Goloka. Well, first of all, they don't accept Goloka. They just say there is Brahman. That's it. There is no Paramatma, no Bhagavan. So first point is they say there is a big, huge blob of light, of spiritual light, called Brahman. So they accept Brahman. The problem is they accept only Brahman, nothing else. So they accept Brahman. And they never accept Krishna. Instead, they say, instead of saying no God exists, they say everyone is God. Which also means no God exists. If I ask, who is the leader among you? If you say everyone is a leader, which means what? Nobody is a leader. Everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility. So instead of saying no God, so it looks like it is theism, but actually it's worse than atheism. At least atheism, they are pretty blunt and upfront. This is twisted. It looks like spirituality, but actually it's very confusing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants our association with anything to do with Mayavada philosophy. Okay, so that's their first understanding, which is it's a Brahman, it's a huge blob of light, and each one of us, they are tiny particles constituting that. Just like in a light, you will have photon particles. Prabhupada uses that analogy. So same way, in the huge blob of light, each photon particle is equivalent to that of a soul. Now, their philosophy goes, some of them, Prabhupada challenges there itself. What determines only some of them? That's a different discussion. Some of them fall from that position and come here. And they still think they are the same as what they are there. So Prabhupada, to refute this, he uses 4 arguments why this philosophy is wrong. Because when this question is asked, why some of them, they actually came down, they don't have an answer. Second question which Prabhupada asks is that how did they fall down, first of all? Then the answer which they usually give is, temporarily they came under the spell of illusion, spell of Maya. Then it goes to show that Maya is more powerful than the Jivas. Maya is more powerful than the God. So Prabhupada, that's why they are called Mayavada, which means those who preach Maya to be superior than God are Mayavadis. And this philosophy is called Mayavada. Okay, so Prabhupada uses 4 arguments in 2.12. If you read the purport, I told you I'll send you the picture where I've underlined and marked. I'll do it today, it'll make more sense. So the first argument Prabhupada says is, according to Mayavada, so at this point of time they are here. Once they leave this planet, they go back again. Actually, they constitute there. Prabhupada is saying, in 223, it's clearly given the soul can never be cut into pieces. For if each one of them, they constitute together that huge blob of light, this very situation wherein you can cut a part of them and let only that part fall, directly contradicts to 2.23, where Krishna says, soul can never be cut into pieces. Okay, so that's the first argument Prabhupada gives. Second argument Prabhupada gives is, now let's say Arjuna is a conditioned soul, he has come here. Prabhupada's question is, now how are you going to account for Krishna?
Why does it contradict 220?
Good question. 223, if we go to the 223 verse, read the translation, one of you. Nainam chintanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavakaha, na kledanti. Yes, read it loud.
The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor consumed by water, nor withered by the wind.
Good. So all of these particles, they constitute one supreme whole, one blob. How can one particle alone get cleaved from there and fall here? That contradicts that it can be cut into pieces, because as I said, quality is the same for Krishna, quality is the same for Brahman, everything. So if then it contradicts that, it means that soul can be cut into pieces. Otherwise, how can each of these dots fall? The very fact, they argue that all the dots or all the souls together form the Brahman, and when they actually fall means that now they are creating some gaps there in that whole formation, which contradicts to the philosophical point here that the soul cannot be cut to pieces. So that's Prabhupada's first argument. Second argument is, now here in this example we have Arjuna, okay, as one dot, going by Mayavad philosophy. Now you have Krishna. Now Prabhupada's point is, if all the souls are same and there is no leader, if there is no Supreme Lord, what is so special about Krishna? Krishna is also going to be another conditioned soul. What makes Arjuna alone to be called as being an illusion and not Krishna? What's the guarantee that Krishna is also not under illusion when he spoke Bhagavad Gita? This is Prabhupada's point. Again, strong argument. So that's the second one. Now if they say, no, Krishna is actually not an ordinary person, he is a supreme person. So then their next point is, Prabhupada's next argument is, that means you agree that there is one supreme person, who even though he comes to material world, he can still be in liberated condition. Or if they go back on the argument,
Do you accept the concept of Gita?
say that again.
Do you accept the concept of Gita?
They do. When Shankaracharya, he wrote a commentary on Gita called Shariraka Bhashya. Shariraka Bhashya. So that's his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. They accept Bhagavad Gita. The one which Prabhupada is quoting in verse 212, it's called Stri Bhashya. That's by Ramanujacharya. Prabhupada uses Ramanujacharya's commentary. Stri Bhashya. Bhashya means commentary. Okay, so that's the second argument. So if they say Krishna is just yet another ordinary person, then Prabhupada says, how are you going to differentiate Krishna's position from Arjuna's position? If they both are in the same position, why should we take one person's words so seriously? Okay, or if they argue back saying, no, Krishna is actually superior, then that means you are inconsistent with their argument. That means you agree that Krishna is superior. So Prabhupada checkmates them both the ways. They accept Bhagavad Gita as true. To accept Bhagavad Gita as true means you need to accept the speaker to be beyond illusion. But if, according to their argument, both the speaker as well as the student, they both are in the same level who fell down, what makes one more special than the other? Which means there's some difference between those two types of jivas. If they say, no, they both are of the same type, then Prabhupada is saying, then throw away the Gita. What's the use of reading something which is spoken under the spell of illusion? That's the third argument Prabhupada gives.
Don't they understand the creator from?
Don't they?
Understand the creator of?
No. Creation, God by definition, they also understand that he has got no beginning. They have taken bits and pieces of the philosophical truth. They also understand that Brahman is beyond the concept of time. They also understand all of that.
In the Bhakti Yoga, do we say some of the souls from Goloka come to the material?
Yes, some of them. That's why, remember, first class we were discussing Arjuna's position, Nitya Siddha and Nitya Baddha. Nitya Siddha never fall down. They always eternally reside. Now the question may come, why did Arjuna come? Arjuna didn't come just like you and me. We fell down because we wanted to enjoy away from Krishna. Arjuna came down to assist Krishna in his pastimes.
So if we get liberated, the chance that we may stay.
Good question. I expected that. Question is that if you say from spiritual world we all came, then after liberation we actually go back, fine. Then can we fall down again? Krishna says, Prabhupada uses this example, once burnt, twice shy. As a kid, you touch a candle, burnt the finger. All of us have that experience. Now if I tell you I'll give you $10, touch it, will you? So same way, once we did the mistake to come down from there to here, Krishna himself promises, Yadgatva na nivartante taddama paramam mama, which means you have already fallen down here. Yadgatva na nivartante taddama paramam mama. But once you come back, Yadgatva na nivartante, you will never come back again. Potential is there, freedom is there, but we won't do it. Okay? Potential is there, but it never happens. It's a possibility, but we'll never realize that possibility at all. Okay, so that's the third argument Prabhupada gives, which is, so as I said, first argument is directly, if you say the soul came back like that, then it directly contradicts 223, which says, soul can never be cut into pieces. Now so that's the first argument Prabhupada gives. The second argument is, they can't account for how Krishna is special among all the souls. And there's only two possibilities. If they say Krishna is the same as all other souls, except once you put a condition, which means Krishna is special, which means you agree this side, it's inconsistent with that. Here, everyone is same. Okay, so that's the second argument Prabhupada gives. So how are you going to account for Krishna's individuality? And if they say Krishna is here, he's not a special type of soul, he's exactly like us, then Prabhupada questions Bhagavad Gita, which means Bhagavad Gita becomes useless. It's not a spiritual science. Because as I said, in the morning we may feel very spiritual. In a day we go through emotions, right? Likewise, Krishna also could have gone through emotions. How can we say whatever he said as absolute? Okay, just like theories put forth by scientists only to be proven wrong by another scientist later. So same way one philosopher would be coming later and they will supersede this particular philosophy, which means we are wasting our time. This is Prabhupada's concept, Prabhupada's argument, which is a very strong argument. Yes. He's go on. Can we come to Shankaracharya later? Slightly off topic. We have to finish the second chapter. Yes. Yes, definitely. Yes, so soul, it's like you take the soul and the soul you blow up. Have you seen how they make glass utensils? They take and they blow. So same way you take a soul, when the soul leaves this body, it goes there and then the same soul gets expanded into a peacock. into a flute, into a gopi. So that's the soul. But once the soul comes here, it takes the size of Balagrashata Bhagasya, 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair. If you read the purport, Prabhupada actually explains there. Okay? Prabhupada also says that because we keep changing body, in this life we are human, next one we can be a dog, and then cat, so on and so forth. Because we keep changing bodies, our memory also gets affected. Some of us may remember, rarely, what you were doing in the previous life and everything. But because we keep changing bodies, we lose our memory. Because Krishna doesn't change body, Krishna retains all the memory. Okay? And the final argument Prabhupada actually gives in 2.12. Somebody may actually say, Krishna speaking about individuality. The whole argument Prabhupada comes when Krishna actually says, Natve vaham jatunasham, natvam naive janatipa. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor any of us, nor in future shall any of us cease to be. So Prabhupada is saying, now Mayavadis argue that the individuality, Krishna is actually saying, current, past, future, they all pertain to not really the soul, but they are talking about an individual body. Which means all the souls were one unit here. When they fell, each one got separated and each one got into one single body. Which means their argument is, once they drop the body, all the five is going to go and merge again into one single blob. This is their argument. But Prabhupada is challenging that. You look at Prabhupada's logic. Once Prabhupada goes to US, and one person is asking Prabhupada, Swamiji, we heard that the death rate is more in India. Prabhupada says, I travel all around the world. Death rate is the same, 100%. So Prabhupada, nobody can defeat him in logic. So Prabhupada is saying, watch this carefully. 213, Krishna is condemning the body concept there. Krishna is condemning the bodily concept here. Here Krishna is talking about changing bodies. Here Krishna is talking about those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Again condemning the body. How can Krishna base his argument? In the previous verse he condemns body, 213 he condemns body. How can Krishna base an argument based on body in 212? It's inconsistent. So Prabhupada is saying, it goes with the same flow. Krishna hasn't changed the focus yet, which means 211 is based on soul, 212 is based on soul, 13 is based on soul, 14 is based on soul. Mayavadi argument is 211 is soul, 212 is body, 213 soul, 14, 15 everything. Prabhupada says that's totally inconsistent. And if individuality isn't such a great thing, such a great aspect, then Prabhupada is saying Krishna is very calculative with what he speaks. Krishna wouldn't have said, even in the future. If something is very important, then we'll stress that, now, in the past, now, as well as in the future. Past, you can say, it's something happened, so it has some importance to it. Present, you can say, because we are living with it. If you say, no, even in the future, which means you are stressing importance to a certain aspect there, which is the individuality. So this is 212. As I said, if I ask you to explain each one, you'll be able to. But if I ask you to explain in a sequence, you will fumble. So understand it, go through it, and then come back with more questions if you have. So in 211, Prabhupada says Krishna is basing his argument on soul. Okay? He's not basing his argument based on material body. Same way in 213 also, Krishna is talking about soul only. Soul passes into boyhood to youth to old age and everything. So if 211 Krishna stresses about the aspect of soul, 213 also he is basing his argument on soul, which means 212 also it has to be based on soul. Because the whole section Krishna is basing his argument on soul only, not on body, which means Krishna is not stressing or giving any importance to body at all. Okay, we have to move on. Questions we can come back later. I have half an hour more. Okay, so 231 to 238, Krishna talks about karma kanda. Karma kanda means that you do a duty, but you are result oriented. So 231 to 238, Krishna talks about karma kanda. If you Remember the yoga ladder, it is in the lowest rung of the yoga ladder. Okay, after this comes karma yoga, then comes jnana yoga, then ashtanga yoga, and then comes bhakti yoga. Okay, this is the lower rung. It's not even connected to Krishna. The very word yoga means to connect with Krishna. What connects? When you speak about connection, we are talking at least two entities, if not more. I can't connect with myself. There has to be at least two. So one is the Jivatma, or the soul, and the other one is Krishna. So this process of connecting between two souls, or the soul and the super soul, this process is called yoga. So the very fact that yoga is missing in this process means it's not spiritual per se. Actually, it's not at all spiritual. So in Vedas, there is a section called the Karma Kanda. And if you read those sections of Karma Kanda, it tells you if you want to become Indra in your next life, you have to do certain sacrifices. If you want to become next any demigod, Chandra, for example, or Varuna, Vayu, so on and so forth, you need to do certain type of sacrifices, and that will enable you to go and acquire it, although temporarily. And then once you run out of credit, you will come down again to the material platform. So that's Karma Kanda. So Krishna is basing his argument from 2:31 to 38 based on Karma Kanda, which means he's telling Arjuna, look, you are going to fight. There's only two outcomes, possible outcomes. You will either win or you will lose. If you win, you will enjoy. As the conqueror of this entire world, you will enjoy for the rest of your life. If you lose, what will happen? Scriptural injunctions say that sannyasis as well as the warriors who defend their country, not the warriors who conquer the other country. Okay, there is a difference. If I live here, if I'm a king, if some other king comes to conquer my place, and I stand on the side of the dharma to fight for my country, and I lay down my life, then I'm eligible to go to heavenly kingdom. So here, who is the good side? Pandavas are the good side. So Krishna is telling to Arjuna, you guys are on the good side, you fight. If you win, enjoy the kingdom. If you lose, anyway, heavenly kingdom waits. Go there and enjoy the kingdom. If you don't do these two, what will happen? If you think, no, out of compassion, I'm giving the kingdom to my relatives and I'm going to just walk away, then your relatives are actually going to call you by a lot of unkind words. For Kshatriyas or for warriors, infamy is worse than death. So better you go for one of the two outcomes. Don't go for the third one. Don't go for begging. Just fight. If you win, you enjoy. If you lose, go to heavenly kingdom, period. Okay, so Krishna talks about Karma Kanda in 2:31 to 2:38. Pretty straightforward verses. Then Krishna starts to talk about Buddhi Yoga. From 2:39 to 2:53, actually. Now, Buddhi Yoga, as the name suggests, first of all, it's yoga, which means it has some connection to Krishna. Whenever you come across this word yoga, understand it is spiritual. It has a potency to become spiritual completely, but it has some stance in spiritual ladder. Whenever the word yoga comes, karma yoga could be, jnana yoga could be, ashtanga yoga, or hatha yoga. And then buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence. Why it is called Buddhi Yoga? Remember, what did Krishna teach Arjuna from 2:11 to 30? You are not the body, you are the soul. So understanding that you are not the body, you are the soul, with that knowledge, with that intelligence, with that knowledge, knowledge is a product of intelligence. So with that knowledge, Krishna is telling to Arjuna, fight, but don't be attached to results. Three things Krishna says. One is, knowledge is required. Do the duty and be detached to the results. So in 2:39 to 2:53, Krishna talks about Buddhi Yoga, and Prabhupada in the purport explains this nicely. If you read 2:39 purport alone, Prabhupada speaks pretty much everything, whatever I've just said. So Buddhi means intelligence, Krishna in the previous section from 211 to 230, before Krishna starts to speak on Karma Kanda, Krishna explained that to Arjuna that we are not the body, we are the soul. So he has given that knowledge to Arjuna. So armed with that knowledge, that's where this word buddhi comes, that's how it's connected. Armed with that knowledge, Krishna is saying, you just do your duty and be detached to the results. That is Buddhi Yoga. Yoga means it has connection with Krishna. Yoga also means there has to be some sort of sacrifice. So two aspects are there for the word yoga. So one is for yoga, there has to be a link to Krishna. And the second one, for along with the word yoga, what it comes is some sort of a sacrifice. Sacrifice means not necessarily an oblation into swaha. Sacrifice more in terms of giving up the credit, giving up the results to Krishna. Whether you give it to Krishna or not, that's a secondary thing. But yoga means you give up. At least you can stay clean. So yoga means whenever you come across yoga, these two also comes with that. So you can read these two aspects synonymous with the word yoga. So when you do Buddhi Yoga, wherein you are armed with the knowledge, you do the duty, but you remain detached to the results. That is called Buddhi Yoga. So Krishna elaborates in that section, 239 to 253. Clear? Okay, we are going to go to the final section. Again, final section is very simple, but the language which Krishna uses confuses us a bit. How does a person sit? How does a person walk? How does a person eat? And we start to think, looks like we are doing Krishna consciousness in a wrong way all along. What does it mean to sit? What does it mean to walk? So in 254, Sthita Prajna Kabasha, verse, Arjuna asks 4 questions to Krishna. So in 239 to 253, Krishna speaks about Buddhi Yoga, or Bhakti, Prabhupada says Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna says how a Bhakti Yogi is supposed to act from 239 to 253. Speaks about Bhakti Yoga, technically Bhakti Yogi. The person who follows Bhakti Yoga is Bhakti Yogi. So in 254, Arjuna asks Krishna, please tell me the symptoms with which I can identify who is a Bhakti Yogi. Because if we go to a group, we want to know. In Ramayana, there is a beautiful instance when Mother Sita was kidnapped by Ravana. Lord Ram and Lakshman, they go in search of Mother Sita in Dandakaranya forest, and then they come across a mountain, Rishyamukha. So there, Hanuman is there on the high ground. He sees from the top of the hill 2 Kshatriya warriors walking down. So Hanuman is the minister, chief minister of Sugriva, who is the monkey king. And Sugriva tells Hanuman, please go and find the identity of those 2 men. I suspect they are sent by my brother to kill me. So then Hanuman has a lot of siddhis. Siddhis means perfection, potencies. He can change his form at will. So he changes his form as a Brahmana and he goes in front of them. And then looking at Lord Ram and Lakshman, Hanuman becomes very jubilant at heart. This is the first time they are meeting. So Hanuman inquires, please identify yourself. And then Lord Ram, just looking at him and hearing his speech, immediately Lord Ram, if you want to understand the Vedic perspective on body language, you can read that section of Kishkinta Kanda. It's a beautiful section. So there, Lord Ram actually says, depending on his body language, who is he, what profession he must be doing, what are his qualities, everything, simply by hearing his question. And then Lord Ram and Lakshman, they identify themselves. I'm Lord Ram, and I'm Ram, son of Dasharath, and this is my brother, Lakshman. As soon as Hanuman hears the word Ram, he immediately comes to his original form, and he falls at Lord Ram's feet. Because he has done, in one sense, offended. He is going in front of the Supreme Lord. He is his eternal Lord. So Hanuman asked this question to Lord Ram, I am your eternal servant. You are my eternal Lord. How is it I didn't recognize you? Maybe we can say Lord Ram didn't recognize him, for argument's sake, even though that wasn't true. But Hanuman is in disguise and he can see Lord Ram. And this is the name he has been chanting all his life for eternity. How is it I couldn't recognize you? And Lord Ram says something beautiful. He says that when you came in front of us, yes, I'm your Supreme Lord, I'm your eternal Lord. When you came in front of us, you were in disguise. You were slightly duplicitous. So I wasn't hiding myself. It's your qualities that actually hid you from actually seeing the truth fully. The moment you actually heard me saying the Ram, in that instance, you immediately dropped that, you were able to recognize me straight away. So when we approach the Supreme Lord, we have to be very, very careful. When we approach the devotees, we have to be very, very careful. We have to carry this mood of humility. We have to carry this mode of total dependency on them, like how Hanuman was actually leading his life. And then if we approach, then the knowledge will be revealed to us. Radhanath Maharaj says, Krishna consciousness is not achieved, it is awarded. Krishna consciousness is awarded. So here Arjuna is asking this question to Krishna. You have said all these symptoms about Bhakti Yogis. Tell me, how can I recognize them? So to answer that, or rather to ask Krishna to elaborate on that, Arjuna asks 4 questions. First question he asks is, what are their symptoms? Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha. Then prabhasheta, so this is bhasha. Means symptoms. Bhasha technically means language, but in this context it means symptoms. What are the symptoms of such person? Second question he asks is, how does he, prabhasheta. Prabhasheta means, how does he speak? Now what speak here refers to, how does he respond? Just like we use phrases in English, right? Like, in those days when they hang a criminal, they have a term called kick the bucket. Because when they hang a person to death, they need to raise him to a level. So they'll invert a bucket, make him stand on that, bring the noose around his neck, and then they'll kick the bucket. So kick the bucket technically means he died. So we use the phrases also, idioms and phrases we use. So same way Krishna is also using his language. So ka bhasha means what are his symptoms. Prabhasheta means how does it speak? How does he speak? Speak means how does he respond to ups and downs in his life. So that's the second question. Kim asita. Asita means how does he sit? Sit. This one also refers to how does he control his senses. Kimma Sita Vrajeta. Vraja means to walk. So control senses, how does he engage his senses? So if you understand this, then it's easy to read that section. So in answer to that, Krishna, you will see, he gives the symptoms in 255. Prabhashita speak. He'll speak in 256, 57. Asita. How does he control senses? 258 to 63. Then 264 to 72. And that's all. Rest are self-explanatory. If you read it, you'll understand. So basically, he's asking 4 questions in 254. What is his language, or what are his symptoms? How does he speak? Which means how does he respond to ups and downs in his life? Kim asita. How does he sit? Which means how does he control senses? Prabhupada uses the example of tortoise. Just like how the tortoise withdraws its senses, so similarly the person also withdraws his senses and engages only as and when required in devotional service of the Lord. Vrajeta kim. How does he walk? Which means, how does he engage his senses in the service of the Lord? Okay, so you just keep the verses number and you understand what you are reading about. It's easy. Second chapter is a summary. There are a lot of verses to cover. I just covered all of them, just to touch on them. Other chapters are pretty much one single theme that goes, whereas in this particular chapter, if you see, there are 5 or 6 different themes that go in parallel. A lot of concepts are introduced. I just want you to start getting acquainted with that. Mayavada we'll be discussing later. That's why I said I don't expect you to remember even anything from today's class, but get yourself used to it. Okay, so if you haven't taken notes, don't worry, it's okay. So, but get yourself used to it. So as you read, as I said, when you read for the pleasure of it. Okay, we still have 10 minutes. I just want to touch on a couple of verses, interesting verses, because it has a lot of application in our practice of Krishna consciousness. So if you go to 262 and 63. Dayato Vishyan Pumsa Sankaste Jupachayate Sankat Sanjayate Kama Kama Krodho Vijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibrama Smriti Brimshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranashyati. Krishna gives a whole chain reaction about how lust starts, how anger, where we get confused, everything. We can relate to that because we all go through that. Unlike modern science or modern theory that says you can think of anything, but when it comes to using your intelligence, you can still remain clean. Okay, so usually if you see many of the even scientists, philosophers, they'll give a very, very high standard of philosophy, but when you study about their personal life, it won't be that good. It'll be little shady. Okay. Now, unlike that modern understanding of learning, education and everything, spiritual understanding goes this way. How much you understand depends on the purity of your consciousness. Our consciousness determines what we see. Usually when you tell people there is God, people say, show me God. Question we have to ask them is, do you have the eyes to see God? Just like if you take a microscope, okay, some of you might have studied in your biology or botany laboratory exercises, they do a cross-section. They may give strains of that. If you look under the microscope, even before you go there, you should first study the theory. So then if you look at the microscope, the cross-section, you can understand. Without it, even if you see it, you can't really make much out of that. So same way, even if Krishna comes down, if we don't understand how Krishna looks, it's very hard. If we don't understand how Bhakti Yoga is supposed to work on us, we can't appreciate the process of Bhakti Yoga. So it's very important to have the knowledge. It's very important to have the proper consciousness. So Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. So Krishna, he gives a whole, like a flow chart you can say, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. By contemplating the object of senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from attachment, lust arises, and from lust, anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, delusion. Sammohat smriti vibrama, confusion of memory. Smriti brimshat, buddhinasho, intelligence is lost. Buddhinashat pranashyati, one falls down. Everything starts from contemplation. So Krishna, that's why you will see the topmost verse which we read at the end of our verse recitation is, one who always thinks of me. So to give up, to practice Krishna consciousness on a gross level is actually very easy. Following 4 regulative principles, it has its challenges, but it's easy to condition the body. But to condition the mind, condition the intelligence, conditioning ego, very, very hard. It takes a lifetime of exercise. It takes multiple lifetimes exercise actually. However, we are not alone. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a beautiful purport on these 2 verses. While we contemplate the object of senses, we develop attachment. You look at something, you look at the latest iPhone, you see, I want it. So you develop the attachment. And then when that attachment goes deeper, lust develops. Lust in a modern sense, it's used only for denoting the attraction between a man and woman. But in Vedic usage, kama means deep attachment for anything. Could be an object, could be anything. So that's used as lust. From lust, anger arises. How does from lust anger arises? If the lust doesn't get satisfied, then anger arises. If the lust does get satisfied, it leads to greed. Interestingly, Krishna, you will see, later he'll say, lust, anger and greed, they are three great ways to hell. Okay, so we contemplate on something, you develop attachment, and then you develop lust when that lust doesn't get fulfilled, which is true most of the cases. So Krishna is talking about the norms here. Okay, Krishna has the potency. Whatever he thinks, he gets straight away. Ichha Shakti, it's called. Whatever he wants, he thinks, he gets it straight away. But we don't have that. Which means 9 out of 10 times our lust is not going to get fulfilled and it is going to lead to anger only. And from anger, we get delusion. Once we get into anger, we should never make any decisions. In Vedic times, Prabhupada says that before you make any decision, you need to consult 3 Brahmanas. Brahmanas will be in mode of goodness, whereas anger starts with passion and goes down to ignorance. So always Prabhupada says, before you make any important decision, we should always consult with the Brahmanas. Now even in our day-to-day life, in 2019, January, when we are angry, we should never make any decision at all. We have to be very, very careful, because that is when we do most of the offenses, and that's when relationships break up. So we need to, when we get angry on something, or when we know anger is overwhelming us, we should pull ourselves out and look at the anger as a person. And then you observe it and let the feeling pass away. When we read Bhagavad Gita, 11th canto, you will see Krishna elaborates in detail about all of this. But for now, this is the chain which Krishna gives. So with anger, there comes delusion, and with delusion, confusion of memory. What it means is, even in Krishna consciousness, if you take, we'll study a lot of scriptures, a lot of scriptural truths and everything. But when we get angry, when we get deluded, we'll make stupid decisions. Like we know this famous story of Vishwamitra. He is a great sage who did tapasya for 10,000 years. Indra gets scared, so he sends Menaka. When Vishwamitra looks at Menaka, he falls for her, and then they both unite. As a result, she gives birth to a baby. Now, Shakuntala. Now, Vishwamitra, after uniting, he thinks he has lost the effect of his 10,000 years of celibacy, 10,000 years of penances, strict penances. He condemns himself. Then again he goes to the forest. Again he sits, meditates. Indra, this time he sends Ramba. Second one. Now the point to note here is, Vishwamitra, when he looks at Ramba, he gets angry. He thinks, what does this Indra thinks about me? What does this Indra think about me? Am I going to fall for the same bite twice? No. And who is this girl who thought that I'm going to fall for her? What I'm going to do, I'm going to turn her to stone. So he directs all his anger towards her, makes her stone, and again falls down for 10,000 after 10,000 years. First time he falls for lust. Second time he falls for anger. So that's why Krishna says, lust, anger and greed, they are 3 great ways to hell, because it starts with the lust, but lust starts from contemplation. So if we really want to control our mind, we should stop thinking, which is hard. That's why Krishna says, Prabhupada, once they ask Prabhupada, how can we control the mind? Prabhupada says, controlling the mind, forget it, we can't. What we should do is, we should pray to Krishna to please come and control the mind, then Krishna can control the mind. So that's our only strategy.
So anger is not good. We should never get angry.
Anger? Yes.
But then once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got angry on Jagai Mother and he called this Sudarshan Chakra. So for devotees also, are there any options where you can get angry?
But better not. It's a two-edged sword. I get asked that question also, almost in every second class. Prabhu, I offended the devotee because he was talking like a demon. I mean, come on. So we stay away from that. Usually, we should not, to be engaged, first of all, it's better to be detached first. Then we can do engagement. Otherwise, we try to engage everything in Krishna service without training, it's a problem. Empowerment without training can cause a lot of difficulties. Okay, so anger, stay away. We'll follow simple lesson. Otherwise, we always have our own ways of justifying it. So it's not recommended.
Where you said if somebody is talking negative about your Guru Maharaj,
You can walk away also.
you can either
You can cut the tongue, you can kill, you can walk away. I'm saying follow the third option, walk away. If you have time, come for deity department. I'll put you in Rajbo cooking. So there are a lot of justifications we can actually give, but as I said, it's a two-edged sword. It's not required. It takes a lot of maturity, a lot of guidance. Even here, Prabhupada says, actually, just because somebody is not his body, he is the soul, doesn't give us the authority to kill him straight away. Killing has to be done based on authority. Prabhupada says, same military if he kills a person on the borderline of his country, he'll be given an award. Same guy, he comes, picks a quarrel in a petty shop in his village, if he kills a person, he'll be put in jail. Same person doing the same act, however, one he is doing with authority, the other time he isn't. So, anger also, on what occasion we actually show anger. Prabhupada clearly warns there, Arjuna kills based on the instruction of the Supreme Authority, Krishna. Krishna is saying kill. Same Krishna can create later. You understand? So we are not in the position of Arjuna, nor are we directly taking instruction from Krishna either. Better stay away. Our spiritual masters always say, just be a servant of the servant. Okay, so delusion, confusion of memory. So that's the point I was actually saying. So memory, whatever we train ourselves in, studying scriptures, hearing instructions, even through experience, they are all stored in our memory. However, when we get angry, when we go into delusion, it will be there. But we can't access it. How many of you have this experience? I know this, but I still did something wrong. I know this, but I made the wrong decision. Okay, so that's confusion of memory. And then intelligence is lost. When confusion of memory goes, because intelligence depends on the memory. That's how you train. You study scriptures, it will remain there in one part of the memory. Intelligence will tap on it the next time a situation comes. But you crashed the hard disk here. So then intelligence is lost. When intelligence, this is the last frontier. When intelligence is lost, finished. Then one falls down. Even though position, it looks like the topmost, it's actually down. Okay, so one falls down again to this material pool. So Krishna says, where does it all start from? Contemplation. So Krishna says, always think of me. Prabhupada says, remembering Krishna means to chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now somebody who looks at all this equation may think, we stand no chance here. Intelligence, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, it can be borrowed from Guru Sadhu Shastra. That's why we study scriptures. Until we come to a position wherein our intelligence is matured enough, our intelligence has developed enough to be able to deal with any situation, we should always borrow. Through studying scriptures, through hearing instructions of Guru, through taking association of devotees, like that. So same way, inspiration also. We haven't seen Krishna face to face. Of course, now we do, but once we leave the temple room, we may not. Okay, our consciousness hasn't developed that much. But scriptures say, but Prabhupada says you can see Krishna anywhere. So with that realization, we borrow and then we go about leading our life. Okay, from our side, we try, then Krishna will do the rest. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says, if we do what we can, Krishna will do what we can't. Surya Prakash Prabhu, last question.
The same hierarchy, in case if you are contemplating on material or sense objects, this is the...
Yes.
You are contemplating on scripture.
Yes. Correct. Correct. So, good question. Prabhu is saying is, if you contemplate on material things, you fall down. However, if you contemplate on Krishna, same thing, instead of fall down, it will take you to the spiritual world. Yes.
You said earlier in the class that Paramatma exists only in the material world.
Yep.
So, when suppose someone is to attain physical when they die, the body remains here, the false ego remains here. What happens to Paramatma?
Good question. What happens to Paramatma when we give up? Prabhupada uses an example in one of the purport. The theory of reflection can be applied to Paramatma in one of the purports. What it means is, Prabhupada is a genius when it comes to everything, but when it comes to using examples and analogies. Let's say there is a sun here. Okay, and then this is the example Prabhupada gives. There are, okay, let's say 3 pots. And 3 pots, they refer to the body. And there is one Jivatma here, one Jivatma here, one Jivatma here. However, if the pot is actually filled with, let's say, water, the same sun will get reflected here, same sun will get reflected here, same sun will get reflected here. Paramatma is one, but he is expanding unlimitedly this way. Now let's come to your case, wherein what will happen when a person gives up the body? Reflection won't be there. So soul will go to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes.
One more. When someone dies, the subtle body along with soul and super soul goes into another body. We talk about that conditioning. So, that condition, where is that, those impressions, where are they saved?
Memory, intelligence. So memory is actually accessible by the intelligence. So intelligence carries all the impressions to the next. We'll study that in 8th chapter. We'll finish here. Sorry. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki, Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Nitai Kora Premanande. Sorry, as I forewarned before, today's class is a bit technical, as I said, but this grounding is required because this is the summary study of entire Gita. You will find application of this knowledge for rest of the Gita. Okay, go through them, especially 2:12. Please go through them. I'll send you my copy of my book where I've actually marked. Go through them, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Hare Krishna. Prashadam. You can go to the restaurant area where we'll serve the prasadam. Thank you.